Here. Happy Friday, TGIF. We made it. Long weekend ahead. Until then, though, I'm with Andy Thurai, a longtime friend of mine and thought leader in the AI and cloud spaces and beyond. Andy, how are you?
Good, man. Good. Beyond infinity.
To
Yeah, good to be
infinity and
talking with
beyond,
you.
which
Right.
is kind of a good talk title for our session today. And before we get into that, you're the only person or analyst I know that has AI built into his name. So
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you.
You,
Got lucky, I guess.
you need to trademark that or something before it becomes a trend. For those who don't know Andy, he is VP Principal Analyst at Constellation Research, a collection of rock star analysts in the AI, ML, and digital transformation spaces. And you have just a ton of experience in the tech industry. What, 30 years or so, 25?
Yeah, about
Tell,
that.
tell us about, introduce yourself and your career to the folks watching.
Sounds good. Hey, I'm Andy Thurai. I'm a VP and Principal Analyst with Constellation. So I focus in the areas of generally about AI ML, but also in particularly about how do you use it for specific applied AI in use cases, things such as IT operations, areas that you're familiar with, things like AI ops, observability, those kind of things. But also, with the generative AI craze, everybody's looking at how do I solve business problems. So generally, any AI ML areas is my coverage area.
And you've been in our space with many blue chip names and your own independent services. So tell us a little, go back through time and tell us, how it all began.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, initially I thought, working for a company is the only way to make a living. So, work for all big organizations, companies, wide ranging from IBM to BMC to Oracle to where not for many, many years. And a couple of years ago, I realized, I'm passionate about, solving customer problems, dealing with the CIO level, CXO level business problems. So I got involved with doing that stuff as an advisor, consultant, and analyst, and then I joined Constellation, been there for about a couple of years. So generally, I concentrate in solving business problems for CXO level.
Indeed. And you were in this world of AI, ML before it was cool, let's say, which was only a year or two ago. Did you expect this frenzy, this frenzied pace of development and investment and ideation that we see in the AI space today? What's happening? What's changed from sort of a backwater, interesting but behind the scenes, very mathy, techie arena to something that even my mom is talking about today?
Right, right. It's actually speaking about mamas talking. As a matter of fact, I took a Uber ride from the airport yesterday to home, and it's a long drive. And we started chatting, and the guy was asking, "What do you do?" And I told him, "This is what I do for a living." And then he started asking questions about Chat GPT. How do we use LLM for his advantage on trip scheduling and routing and things like that, which is amazing. So it has reached a hype level that everybody's talking about AI. But if
Yeah, 2 years
I'm
ago he would have asked you for a good crypto stock recommendation.
that's right,
So
Web3
at
metaverse or
least
what
we've
have you.
moved along. But what are your clients? What are some of the leaders in the industry thinking about the most exciting trends looking forward? I won't talk about years, maybe just 6 months or a year ahead. What can we expect from your standpoint?
Honestly, man, if I were to say something is going to happen in 6 months, probably will be proven wrong because the technology innovation is that, the pace is accelerated. I mean, there are many reasons why, but, generally speaking, the innovation cycle and the experimentation cycle has changed. And this is one of the conversations, that when I was having with the CIO, CXO rather, he told me there are two things, well, among the two or three things that's important or that has changed that was not happening before. One, your innovation and experimentation and ideation is fairly easier and cheaper because in the old days, if I were to do whatever, it's not just about building an AI ML model. If I were to experiment over something, the infrastructure software costs alone that I have to dump in to
Mm.
start even experimenting that would be millions of dollars. Now all I got to do is spin off a cloud instance and boom, I'm ready to go. I'm doing whatever I need, right? So that faster pace of innovation is aided by that. That's one. And the second thing is this is true with any company in a digital economy. It's more of you do what we call as a fail fast. So you experiment, and then if it fails, you know what? Guess throw the whole thing away and then experiment again, and until you get it right. And after 5, 6, 10 times, if it doesn't work, throw away and walk away and do something else. So that easier, faster speed to innovation, plus your failing fast and open to do that, and also the risk appetite. Because if you were to look at 5, 10 years ago, particularly in the healthcare and other regulated industries, if you were to go and tell them, hey, these are the things we could do for you, they would laugh at you, saying that don't worry about it, we got it figured it out, go away. But now they come to you and ask you, hey, we see this happening in multiple other industries. For example, we were having a conversation with one of the CIO level with one of the hospitals, and the things that they're trying to experiment with the nurses or doctors, trying to not only gather information, not particularly about a patient, but about symptoms, and look it up and doing things like that. That information was, for many years, it was paper based. Nobody was tracking about it, and it's all tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge always get lost if the person leaves or dies, what have you. But now everything is computerized, so I'm able to get that information, first-hand knowledge. And there's a hospital even experimenting with ChatGPT and other similar systems. If I have a bad news that I want to deliver to a patient, how do I, phrase that up? Because we are not all, studied psychology and good talkers and go how compassionately to talk to people. How do I phrase it up? How do I come and talk to them to say, you know what, you have whatever you have, but how do you mildly tell them rather than going out and tell them, hey, you're going to die tomorrow, you know? But so those
Yeah.
are the things that I
So
think.
I know, Andy, your wife's a nurse, so I imagine she's also asking you about AI and machine learning, or is she just telling you, "Hey, take out the trash and the recycling"? That's not
Well,
talking
both,
about AI at all.
both.
Uh, uh,
But yeah, no, the pace of innovation actually has reached in places that they are looking at some of the things, not particularly from her, but there are other doctors and others. You know that I always love to have straight conversation with people about topics. So there are conversations I've had with some of my doctor friends, and there was one use case he was talking about, which blew my mind away. This is during the COVID days, right? About 2 or 3 years before. And they were getting more patients than they could handle to admit into the ERs, into emergency rooms. They were using AI system to decide who has the highest chance of probability of survival. So make use of the most. So we could admit those patients. If I have only 5 beds, if I have 200 patients coming in, how do I choose which five? It could be a first
mm.
in, first out, right? And in which case you lock out the other 185. But if I have a patient that I choose which has a higher chance of survival, I could treat them and cure them versus someone else who's older or don't have a survival chance to lock that bed up. But that never went anywhere because it got challenged in court. And this is another problem we have, because if your AI system is not transparent enough to prove to the legal and judicial system, saying that if a human were to make a decision, that they will make the same exact decision AI would have made every single time. If you don't prove that beyond reasonable doubt, your decision is going to get tossed every single time. There are many
Such an
cases.
important topic. Yeah. And so there are all these conversations happening behind the scenes. It's not all about ChatGPT and OpenAI and Microsoft and Google that we see in the headlines every day. And you work with the kind of really interesting, often smaller, innovative companies behind the scenes, enabling all this exciting applications, developing the infrastructure, software and hardware. Tell us about that world, because that's not something most of us have a perspective on, and you know it so well. Whether it's the AI ops world, or DevOps and ML ops, and that whole infrastructure, that's industry that's ramping up.
Hmm.
You have quite a perspective on that. What's happening?
A ton. So this is another interesting thing, right? Because when we have the older systems, well, they back to mainframe, of course, and then the other systems, we figured out, for most point, we figured out how to make them work. But when the cloud came into to fruition, the having the cloud scale up and down, it's not that easy. It's very complicated, because especially with cloud, because it's so flexible, so customizable, you could pretty much customize every stack, every layer of the stack, and people do that quite often. So if you do that, it becomes extremely difficult because it's all over the place, right? And people over customize it at times, over scale it at times, and so there is an opportunity at every level of the stack. There are a ton of companies that are innovating in every one of those areas. Um, so there is an opportunity everywhere.
Indeed. And so tell us about a week in the life of Andy. Every time I talk to you, you're going somewhere or coming back from somewhere. I really can't keep track. I thought I travel a lot. It's really
Yeah.
nothing compared to you and the team at Constellation. So where have you been recently? Just maybe the last weeks, and where are you off to next?
Yeah, all over the place. So a lot of times we get to attend to some of the big events that put up either by vendors or by thought leadership community as conferences or workshops or whatnot. And we get to attend. For example, last week, not last week, this week actually. Matter of fact, losing
Friday,
time here.
remember?
Yeah, it's still Friday. Yeah, of course. I was in San Francisco attending the Databricks conference.
Okay.
And one of the advantages of being an industry analyst, that's why I love doing this. There are two things we get to do. One, there are general sessions that are available, and then there are industry analyst sessions in which all the C-level come and present to us. For example, the CEO Ali Ghazi, and then their CRO, their CMO, and their chief sales officer, field sales, all of them come and present to us, saying that not only about where they are today, but what their plan for the future is. And a lot of them are under NDA, of course, we can't share it outside. But then when they tell what their vision is, where they think it's going, we get to ask some tough questions, and they
Hmm.
are open and honest with their answers most times, and they'll of course tell us that it's under NDA, you can't share it outside. But there are some things what they see as industry trends, which is interesting. And then also we get to speak with the C level, CXO level of the customer buy side of things, which is where most of my conversations are. And then I ask them those questions, saying that, hey, this particular company, the CEO said, this is what they are seeing. Are you seeing this? Sometimes it aligns with that. Sometimes they are like, well, they have no idea what they're talking about. That's not the problem we have. And that's where the problem is. So this is what I tell the startups. It doesn't matter how, shite and brainy and the Swiss Army knife your object is, right? It doesn't matter at the end of the day. You could have the best possible, tool to slice your bread, but if the customer don't see a value in it, you're not going to survive. Not going to happen. That's a major issue with a lot of startups, which you don't realize. They build the best possible tool, they'll give it to you, and then the customers take one look at it and say that, yeah, it's cool, but not going to do much for me.
Yeah, that's a trap many founders
Yeah,
fall into, is building a product for themselves because they find it useful, but not
for
for
them, for them.
a customer.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. So your background is actually as much a practitioner, problem solver, as an analyst or observer. What are some of the challenges, roadblocks you see facing deployment and solving real world problems, and how are what do you when you talk to all these customers and partners, what do they tell you about how hard or difficult it will be to get these solutions to market?
yeah. So, like I said, one of the issues that seeing a business value. If I can solve a certain problem that it's going to help a company it, say whatever. I mean, there are only few ways you could slice it, right? When it comes to the sales cycle, either I'm going to, help you create new revenue stream that you never thought of, that never existed, or I'm going to make your existing systems more efficient and more productive, make your people more productive, systems more efficient, or I'll offer some security governance solutions that'll keep you out of jail. So there are only so many buckets you can put them in, and when you put them in, you got to understand what is that problem you're trying to solve, and what is the real need for this customer. And if you can demonstrate to them saying that, hey, you're doing this way and it's costing you this much now, whether it's time or money wise, and 5 years down the road, this is the road you're leading, is that where you really want to be? And they're ready to talk to you at that time. But without that, if you go and say that, hey, if I, and this is a conversation when I have, I mean, startups brief me all the time, AI companies brief me all the time. When they come in, the first statement when it comes out their mind is that, oh, we are the first chat GPT equivalent to the world. We are the best. We're the sweetest, and we are the fastest. And I'm like, that's all fine. It's all superlative terms. It doesn't mean anything to me. But what does it
Hmm.
do to solve a specific customer problem? If they come and tell me, remember they have this problem, for example, this company I was talking with on the other day, without naming names. They are in the IT operations field of things. It's a startup, and they're trying to plug in the hole where a lot of other legacy companies cannot. For example, if I were to create a specific problem, whether it's for a customer service or for a help desk, the company would basically profile you as an individual. They know who you are, and then they know the past problems you had, whether from this particular location or for somewhere else, and the cases you have created. Basically, it knows everything about you. It becomes you, right? And
Hmm.
then it'll come back and tell you, the last time when you're in here, you had a similar problem. We tried this way and it worked. Why don't you try that out? And that kind of conversational, especially bringing it to a human conversation, this is where the major issue is, because all of the information that was available until now, the data points, they're all put it in a more structured way if you think about it. So in order for me to get a proper information, I need to know how exactly get that information out, even though the information is available. But when you make it easier interface for people to say, I can ask you the normal way that I communicate with you. In other words, make the system communicate with you the way you want rather than the way the systems want. That's a major difference.
Yeah, great points. A great insight as always. So let's talk about some of the public perceptions and worries concerned. You have, okay, is AI going to steal my job? There's really no clear answer to that one. Is AI going to kill me? The Terminator question you get all the time in the public sphere. And misinformation, false information, fake news, security threats. For what are some of your thoughts on some of those
Oh
high
my
level
God, you loaded
items?
that question with like about each of them could be a 1 hour conversation, or many days conversation for that matter.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
It is, it is. So, I mean, there are a lot of concerns. Look, at the end of the day, people can come and say that, oh, no, nothing is going to replace or make you lose jobs, which is a lie. Because anytime when you adopt a newer technology, there will be a loss of jobs. There is no denying that, right? I'll give you a simple example. We both from Massachusetts, Boston area. You remember, we're dating ourselves here. You remember the toll booths we had everywhere?
Oh yeah. You'd have to slow down and give them a
Yeah,
dollar or
like,
change, or yeah,
and
it created traffic headaches. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. All of those issues by putting all those newer technology with the scanners, the whole 9 yards. You don't even slow down anywhere. You fly at the same speed that you use, and of course, in here we drive 10, 15, 20 miles above speed limit always, and it works just perfect, right? And when people came out and said that, that was the argument that they had initially, saying that we're going to lose a lot of those, low level jobs. What are you going to do about it? So,
Actually, they weren't low level jobs. To be honest, the average toll booth taker was a state worker with pension and healthcare benefits and made about
oh my
$75,000 a year on average.
God,
Believe
no,
it or
no,
not.
no wonder things are expensive here. So, yeah,
So
so
I'm not
well,
I'm not anti state workers. I'm just pointing out some
it's
data
not a cheap
points.
job. You are saying it's
It's
not a
not a
cheap
low income
job,
job. Yeah.
right? So,
And
but
perhaps
but the
neither are some of the content marketing or copywriter jobs or other
yeah, I mean,
things that
so
are
I
already
mean,
being impacted.
when the industrial automation came into fruition, there are a lot of automation jobs eliminated the worker jobs. So, yes, I mean, the non-skilled, semi-skilled workers jobs are always a threat with the new introduction of technology. For example, you might have seen that Burger King, Wendy's, and all of them, they're rolling out a fully automated drive-through systems and stuff, so which
Yeah.
means it is going to replace people. And sometimes, I even question, which is better, machines or humans, because they get your order wrong all the time. And their ordering systems is one of the worst. I could never hear them. They could never hear me. So I prefer to walk into order, right? So how bad it can be, right? When you talk, I've done used one of those systems. You go there and order. The order is shown in the display, and then you got to show your credit card. Order is taken. Boom. The only serving is human, which also could be potentially replaced. So I'm not advocating that the human, all human jobs be replaced with that. All I'm suggesting is, if there are low level jobs that requires no skill or very limited skill set, if that can be automated, whether it's by software or robots or some other system, it is always a threat. And the jobs that require some human thinking, human brains to do some creativity work involved, there is always way to human rather AI augment the human intelligence. So in the next few years, what do I see? I see the AI augmenting almost in every facet of the world for
Mm.
people. Just going back to the doctor example that I was talking about, one of my friends is a radiologist, great guy, and one of the things he was suggesting is that they started using this AI based software, in which they used to use the radiology images to scan through AI, and what he was suggesting actually shocked me. He said, okay, let me ask you a question before answering that. If you were to go to a doctor, if they take an x-ray or some radiology, what have you, and then they go through that, how accurate do you think they are?
Today, 90%, 95.
Just the doctors, now, without having
Right.
software.
Yeah, 95%.
Apparently, what I was told is that they are somewhere in the 60 to 70% range, a
Wow,
human
that is
accuracy, right?
scary. Get a second
Particularly,
opinion. That's the key.
particularly when it comes to issues that can be identified earlier. I mean, if the issue is big enough, it's easy to catch. But if it's a very small dot, what have you, and so what they actually use is they use AI systems in production without naming names, and he says the accuracy level has gone up to anywhere between 90 to 95%. So the things they miss, it'll AI system will go through much faster than they are, and it'll come back and make suggestions to them saying that, hey, it looks like you have missed these three, whatever that may be. Take a closer look at it. And they take a closer look at it, and if they are suspicious about something, order something else on top of it or what have you. So that kind of things. And the other thing people don't realize, without the technology advancement, I'm not either advocating either side of it, but remember the COVID things we had, the vaccine that came out and all
Mm.
that? You know how long it'll take to create a normal vaccine, the vaccine cycle and testing it and people and
Oh,
doing all of the stuff. You're
it's
talking
like a
about
decade
decades.
or
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and how long did it take for the vaccines to come out? Yes, it's a different technology, different testing cycles. But without help of technology and AI, there is no way would have been to do what we have done that fast. So there are areas in which, I mean, genome sequencing. This is a friend of mine works in the industry. We have talked about that. One of the things he told me fascinates me. It's not easy to do, but technically speaking, you would be able to sequence your DNA, your genome, and analyze it inside out to know what are the diseases you might get potentially when you die. Those kind of predictive measures you'd be able to. It may not be 100% accurate, but it'll know who you are, not just an outside, but as an inside as well. That's fabulous, fascinating.
So many opportunities. What a bookmark from the getting your fries right at the drive-through to getting your radiology scan right at the doctor's office, and
Right.
everything in between. And where do you publish? Where do you have obviously have a body of work that's public and private. How can people get access to that?
Yeah, no, I publish all over the place. So, but one place, I'm not a social media mogul like you are, but I do post most of my stuff on LinkedIn as well as on Twitter. And my Twitter handle, you can see it there, right here. And on LinkedIn, I'm under the same name, and I post as much as I can about the stuff I do. And then I also write articles which gets published on Constellation website and other places as well. That's the things that I can discuss outside. But then the obviously the confidential conversations I have at the CXO vendor level never gets published. But there are times that when customers or somebody wants to have an advice, they reach out to me on LinkedIn and other social media places, and they say, "Hey, Andy, can we have like a quick 30-minute call? I want to pick your brain on that." I'm always open
Yeah,
to
you're full of
network.
advice. Mostly good, I would
Yeah.
I would say. Mostly good. 90%. Kidding. And tell me, for those who don't know Constellation, you're a really interesting firm. Of course, Ray Wang is the CEO and founder, and everyone seems to know Ray. But how do you view Constellation in the landscape of analyst firms? I mean, you've got on one hand the big Gartners and IDCs and Foresters of the world who have this long history and brand recognition. How do you see yourselves at Constellation in the worldview of
Yeah, so
analysts?
we're that's a great question. It comes up in a lot of customer conversations all the time, right? So we actually make the most impact for the number of analysts we have. We are a small firm. We are about 8 analysts, And each one of us is star analysts. You actually know all of them. I think you have had all of them in your show too, right?
Yeah, you're all rock stars, basically. I think
Yeah.
that's the difference.
So that's why when I had an opportunity to join them, I couldn't resist, because I've not only that I've known them for a long time, respected them, but even now when these guys put out a report, as soon as possible I'll get it and read it, because there are a ton of information I learned from them that eye-opening for me at times. And I obviously we have a weekly calls between ourselves, and I pick their brains as well. But the difference is, like I said, we mostly concentrate on the CXO side. We don't write for the vendors. We write for the buy side. So if you look at all of our reports, none of our reports are sponsored reports, as you can see. It's not like a sponsored by blah and all that. We put out a
You're
thought leadership
describing my business. Everything is pay for play. But sorry.
So we put out a thought leadership report about, CXO level, what are you doing? What are the problems you're facing? How it can be solved? And if the vendors are interested, they engage with us. But again, like I said, our opinion comes out based on our conversation with the buy side. That's where we concentrate mostly. So it's a subtle difference, but all of us do that, and that's one of the reasons why. And that's why we also don't overload our firm with many analysts. I don't want to name names, but there are other analyst firms. When you deal with them, you will get to talk to a star analyst in the first call, and the next ones will be gone missing, AWOL. And then you'll talk to some junior analysts, and they'll put out a report, may not be worth what you're doing. In our case, if you get to deal with Andy and AI/ML, you stick with Andy, whether you like him or not. If you don't like him, you can go somewhere else. But we are the only contact points, and
You're
we do.
likable enough, as they said
Thank
once
you.
about
I
someone.
appreciate
Yes.
that. I appreciate
But
that.
so what are you looking forward to this summer? Are you slowing down at all? Obviously, next week. Hopefully, you're not traveling during
Yeah.
July 4th week. What's coming up in July and August?
So next week, luckily, I'm not traveling. Now that I had to reel back in 3-4 weeks of back-to-back travel. So for a couple of weeks, no travel. After that, the travel picks back up again, 2 or 3 conferences. But actually, I am working on a couple of reports. One of the things what people don't realize is that it's not easy. The ChatGPT, all the craze, training that large language model, the LLM, the ChatGPT foundational models, is not easy. It's one of the most demanding tasks. And not just training, but operationalizing the machine learning models is also extremely difficult. So I have a couple of reports coming up on that. One is on ML ops, which I mentioned to you earlier on, that I'm working on, which should be out soon. And there are a few other smaller LLM, how to train an LLM, what's the most efficient way, and what does it do for you in the business use case kind of stuff. Now, recently, I also wrote a couple of Forbes article on the topic as well that I published. So there are so many backlog stuff because of my travel got pushed back. So I guess I get to sit and write stuff.
Well, you can write on the airplane, so come on. You got to multitask here. It's not all
Yeah,
about watching movies.
there you go. There you go. Yeah. I should start doing that more.
Okay. All right. Well, it's been fun as always. Thanks for joining. Happy holiday, everyone. Have a great long weekend. And yeah, thank the viewers as always for participating. Take care.
Thanks.